Europe's refugee crisis. EU ministers meet in Brussels for crunch talks. Meanwhile, millions are also on the move across Africa. And the People's Pope and social media. The Church prepares for a hashtag storm during the Pontiff's visit to the United States. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent Makori. This is Africa 54. Amid tight security, up to 6 million children nervously returned to school in Cameroon on Monday. Recent deadly attacks by the terrorist group Boko Haram has shaken residents in the northern region of the country. In Douala, the economic capital of Cameroon, students and their belongings were thoroughly searched with metal detectors before they were allowed to enter school grounds. Authorities say they are not taking any chances in working to avoid future attacks. Security teams have been doubled and many schools plan to install cameras. Parents say they understand the new measures are being taken to ensure the security of their children.
But this is just to protect our children because we want them safe in school and we want everybody to be, relaxed and happy to be here because with all the heightened threats in town and wherever, we have to make sure that our children are safe.
Well, despite having thousands of soldiers in the northern border areas as part of a military operation aimed at curbing the spillover of violence from Boko Haram in Nigeria, at least 9 people were killed in 2 bomb attacks on Sunday in the northern Cameroon town of Kolofata in what appears to be the latest attacks by the Islamist militant group. Cameroon's army spokesman, Colonel Didier Badjek, who confirmed the death toll, says an investigation was underway amid conflicting reports about whether the attacks were carried out by 2 teenage boys or 2 young women. Kolofata is near the border with northeast Nigeria and has repeatedly been the target of attacks by Boko Haram. Cameroon is a major contributor to an 8,700-strong Nigerian-led regional force expected to start operations against the Islamist group this year. Now, European interior ministers are meeting Monday in Brussels to discuss ways to spread responsibility for the seemingly endless flow of refugees into Europe from the Middle East and Africa. Many of the migrants do not want to settle into just any country. Some are literally walking through several countries to reach Germany. The mass migration has prompted Berlin to temporarily reinstate passport controls along its border with EU partner Austria to limit the flow of migrants and refugees.
Dieser Schritt ist notwendig geworden.
This step became necessary. The great willingness to help that Germany has shown in recent weeks by full-time employees and especially by the many thousands of volunteers must not be overstrained. The measures are also a signal to Europe. Germany is taking on its humanitarian responsibility, but the burden caused by the huge numbers of refugees must be distributed by solidarity in Europe.
Germany and Austria recently agreed to let in migrants in a bid to alleviate the number gathering in Hungary. Hungarian authorities are working on expanding and fortifying its border fence with Serbia, topping it off with razor wire.
The situation is not ideal. That's why we are calling on Hungary to improve reception facilities. Because you see women and children, as you and I talk, we see a lot of women and children coming from there with the families, and they have been walking for days and days. So above all, these are human beings. And after that, they are fleeing war and conflict, so they need to have special care.
Starting Tuesday, Hungarian officials say they will prosecute any migrants they catch trying to avoid their border police. More than 430,000 migrants seeking a better life, including refugees from Syria and Iraq, have crossed the Mediterranean Sea to Europe this year. The International Organization for Migration says nearly 3,000 have died trying. That figure crept higher Sunday when at least 28 people drowned off Greece after their boat capsized. Parts of Europe, especially Eastern European countries, blame Germany for the wave of migrants onto the continent. Germany, however, has become increasingly frustrated with some members in the EU who have shown a reluctance to share the burden of the newcomers. Well, tensions are mounting in Hungary ahead of Tuesday's government's promised crackdown on illegal migrants crossing into the country from Serbia. Now, viewers, Aisha Tanzim reports from Budapest.
The steady flow of migrants into Hungary from Serbia may come to a sudden halt on Tuesday. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban has promised tough action against anyone crossing the border illegally from that day onwards. Doing so could mean 3 years in prison. Trying to cut the newly erected fence could mean 5 years. The Hungarian government is trying to finish this fence before the 15th, when a new law comes into effect which will make it illegal to cross the border without proper papers. Anyone entering Hungary will have to file for asylum. But first, they will have to prove they could not file for asylum in Serbia. The Hungarian Helsinki Committee Human Rights Group has called this a blanket authorization to reject 99% of asylum claims. The government has already moved several thousand soldiers to the border to bolster police already assigned there. Meanwhile, volunteers helping the migrants say they will continue their work.
Hungary has a history when humanity and what is legal came to different avenues, and one has to choose. And I'm sure here everyone will choose humanity.
No one knows exactly what will happen Tuesday, but in their own way, journalists, activists, migrants and the government are all preparing for the worst. Aisha Tansim, VOA News, Budapest.
Well, some European countries are preparing to take in masses of refugees, but others are preparing to block them with strict laws and fences. As viewers Heather Maddock reports from Athens, refugees say they are in a hurry because they believe the time is running out for them to reach their destination.
Many refugees here in this Greek port city say they have only one shot to get to Europe. By the time they get here, they have spent most of every penny they could gather on smugglers.
My destination is Germany or Sweden. Where there is hope, there is life. I want to live.
As thousands of refugees load onto a giant boat from Greek island ports to Athens for about $50 each, hopes are high. This is the easy part of the journey. But news of the chaos at the Macedonia border, their next major hurdle, and Hungary's efforts to block them from entering, dominates conversations all over the boat. Many people say even if they could afford to go back, there's nothing to return to.
Of course I don't work now. It upsets me a bit, but I like to look to my future.
When the boat docks in Athens, thousands of refugees deboard, hoping to catch buses or trains to Macedonia as quickly as possible. But bus drivers are already waiting outside the boat. For a little more than $50, passengers can get a ride directly to the border. Nearly everyone gets on. There's nowhere else to go but forward. Heather Murdoch, VOA News, Athens.
Now, the International Criminal Court recently ruled that it will admit recounted evidence in the case against Kenyan Deputy President William Ruto. That decision has sparked a fresh round of anxiety among politicians from the nation's ruling Jubilee Alliance. The ruling followed an application by ICC prosecutor Fatou Bensouda 4 months ago, asking that the statements of 16 prosecution witnesses who succumbed to improper influences and either recanted or refused to testify in court be admitted as evidence against Deputy President Ruto. Well, for some insight on the ICC Ruto case, Charles Jallo, an ICC observer and associate law professor at Florida International University, joins me live via Skype from Miami. Professor Jallo, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you, Vincent, for having me.
Yes. Now, first, one thing one may want to get some clarification. How is it that evidence that had been initially deemed unfit to be used by prosecution can now be brought back and become credible?
Well, I think we have to look at the evolution of the case. As you know, as you pointed out in the lead, the prosecutor had some difficulties in Kenya because of interference with witnesses. So basically, they had taken some statements before that they're now seeking to bring back in because the witnesses are either recanted or no longer willing to testify.
Now, if those witnesses are adamant they will not testify for whatever reason, whether it is coercion or fear, can that evidence really, at the end of the day, help the prosecution?
Well, this is a big question that the folks that have been watching this issue are asking. Basically, this step that we saw in the court in the decision is basically to just say we can bring the evidence in, because it seems relevant. There will be a separate question as to whether the judges will deem it credible enough to use it for the purposes of determining the ultimate outcome as to the guilt or innocence of an accused person. So really, this is just a preliminary step in the process. It's no guarantee that the judges will use the evidence at all. The judges are not required to use any type of evidence if they don't find it credible.
In Kenya right now, there's a lot of political posturing, a lot of theatrics and drama around, the support being drummed up for Mr. Ruto. From your knowledge of how the court operates, does it matter really what's going on the ground in Kenya?
In many ways, it doesn't, to be honest. Part of the political posturing that's happening in Kenya is just political posturing. The legal position remains the same. These particular accused persons that happen to be from Kenya are before the court. Their trial would conclude at some point, and the judges will go back and look at all the evidence to see if it meets the standard of beyond reasonable doubt, which is a very, very high threshold that the prosecutor must meet. So what's happening in Kenya really is primarily at this point theatrics, political theatrics. It's not going to change the legal outcome necessarily.
Now, from your analysis, does this look good for the ICC, or again, it's one of those situations which might just drag on and on?
Well, I think the decision that was issued by the court is the correct one. So the process has to continue, again, keeping in mind that this evidence that they're bringing in at the moment is only being brought in so the judges can assess it. Later on, they will look at whether it's credible enough evidence for them to use towards determining the culpability of an accused person. So in the end, I think it's a step forward for the prosecution side. Obviously, the defense is unhappy with it, and they've appealed, so we'll see what the appeals chamber says. But assuming the appeals chamber maintains the decision, then it's going to be interesting to see. We will see the end of the conclusion of the trial probably fairly soon, and it will be interesting to see what the judges find afterwards.
Professor Jallow, thank you very much for your insights.
Thank you so much, Vincent.
Professor Charles Jallow is an ICC observer and associate law professor at Florida International University. Well, we want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we covered during the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa54, and check out all headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. I also want to hear from you. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vince Makori. Coming up, escaping conflict in Africa, millions of people are on the move across the continent. Stay with us.
Wherever you are, Voice of America is on air, reaching more than 130 million weekly, worldwide, in more than 40 languages. Online, social media, and breaking news from around the world. On the go, dozens of new features on popular platforms with new apps and trending topics. Voice of America, on air, online, on the go.
I am Sheikha Sali, host and senior editor of VOA's international call-in talk show, Straight Talk Africa.
Today, we'll examine the tobacco industry.
We pretty much touch on anything that you can think of. Politics, health issues, human rights issues, you name it, we talk about it. The issues that we discuss are pertinent to most people on the African continent. A very, very rare and unique opportunity to interact with their leaders.
Welcome back. As the world focuses on the refugee and migrant crisis in Europe, millions of people are also on the move across Africa, escaping poverty and persecution. Migration experts say the global networks are linked, and any solution must address the causes of the upheaval at the source. Henry Ridgewell tells us more.
For these Senegalese migrants, it was a bittersweet homecoming to Dakar airport. They were forcibly returned from Libya earlier this year, from where they were trying to reach Europe by boat.
They caught us at sea and they took us to a prison in very bad conditions. We were sleeping on the ground. The conditions there aren't good for a human being.
The world's attention is focused on the hundreds of thousands of refugees and economic migrants arriving on Europe's shores. But that is just a snapshot of a global crisis.
Europe is facing a crisis of how it's responding to refugees. It's not facing a refugee crisis. I mean, globally there are 19.5 million refugees right now.
With so many people on the move, campaigners say the search for a solution should focus on the source of upheaval, whether it's conflicts in the Middle East or poverty and persecution in Africa.
What's happening right now in the Mediterranean is just the last step of a long, long process that in many cases started here in West Africa.
The majority of migrants in Africa stay on the continent, but moving around is getting harder amid concerns over the economy and security. In South Africa, migrants fled an outbreak of xenophobic attacks this year by residents afraid of foreigners taking their jobs. Cameroon, Niger and Chad have deported thousands of Nigerians following attacks by the Islamist terror group Boko Haram.
In very specific areas, the presence of large numbers of migrants, sometimes undocumented, is a concern for many governments, especially with the risk of infiltration of terrorists or armed groups of different kind.
European and African leaders are due to attend a summit in November aimed at dealing with the migrant crisis. Experts say any solution must address the lack of economic opportunities in many parts of sub-Saharan Africa. Henry Ridgewell for VOA News, London.
We're turning to business. The African Diaspora Marketplace is holding a two-day African Business Expo event beginning Tuesday just outside of Washington, D.C. The African Diaspora Marketplace was launched in 2009 by the U.S. International Agency for International Development and Western Union to foster sustainable economic growth and employment by supporting African diaspora entrepreneurs who are starting or expanding innovative and high-impact businesses on the continent. To tell us more about it, I'm joined by Barbara Span, Vice President of Global Public Affairs at Western Union. Ms. Span, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you, Vincent. I'm glad to be here.
Yes, now this sounds like a very exciting event. First, just give us a sense of what it started as. I mean, it looks like it's the third year. How did the idea come out?
It is the third time. You know, Western Union, we really focus on the voice of our customer. And so in talking to the many African diaspora here in the U.S. and around the world, one of the things they said to us is, we want to do more than send remittances. We want to invest. We want to invest for a profit. We want to run businesses at home. USAID, on the other hand, focused on generally larger initiatives in Africa. And we really came together and for the first time had USAID focused on direct to the entrepreneur kind of work that Western Union is used to doing.
So what kind of initiatives and ideas do you support? I mean, people in the diaspora have all ideas about business, but do you have specific things that you target?
We really focus on catalyzing investment and growth in productive businesses. For example, there are businesses to capture and identify counterfeit pharmaceuticals. There are high-speed ferries, such as across Lake Victoria. There's organic certification for agriculture for export markets instead of import markets. So it really runs the gamut of all kinds of business sectors.
So quickly tell us what's going to happen at this business expo that is taking place in Silver Spring.
Sure. It's first of all, it's important that it's in Silver Spring because there is a very large population of African diaspora. So at the event, there will be 35 competing diaspora-owned businesses, and those businesses will take place in Africa. That's where they'll be rooted with investment coming from here. There will be hundreds of other business owners, African business owners from Silver Spring who will come. 35 competing for cash prizes, technical funding and assistance from Deloitte, other equity funding, also mentoring from George Washington University. So lots going to happen there.
Okay, and so there are people coming from the continent itself?
Yes, there are business partners. You know, so many diaspora, and we found that on average, those who compete to start businesses there and start investing at about 15 or 20 years out of the country. But many of them, being gone that long, need to have business partners internally, really to be able to engage again. So their partners, along with the diaspora owners, will be here together competing.
Someone out there may want to attend this event, maybe tomorrow or Wednesday. What does it take?
It takes showing up at the Silver Spring Civic Building and walking in and attending the event. There are 26 different workshops on legal aspects of doing business in Africa, on equity investment, on the Young African Leadership Initiative, how to be a mentor, all kinds of other investment opportunities.
And how about becoming part of, this marketplace, say to exhibit, or how does somebody really gain from this initiative?
Well, there are a lot of business owners who are looking for investors, yet they aren't as good at articulating their business. There are a lot of great ideas out there, but articulating the reason for investing in your business, there's a lot of opportunity to learn how to do that better, to network and meet potential investors or business partners, and come out with a stronger business, stronger articulation of one's business plan.
Yeah, so hopefully many will show up or just try to get in touch with you.
It's not just about the capital. It's about being able to gain access as well.
All right. Thanks a lot, Ms. Span.
Thank you, Vincent.
Well, Barbara Span is the Vice President of Global Public Affairs at Western Union. Well, it's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54. The Catholic Church prepares for a social media storm during Pope Francis' U.S. visit. We'll be right back.
If you've just joined us, I'm Mariama Diallo, and here is a quick recap of today's headlines. In Egypt, security forces have killed 12 people, including 2 Mexican tourists, after mistakenly opening fire on the visitors. In Cameroon, at least 9 people are killed in 2 bomb attacks in the northern town of Kolofata. We stay in Cameroon, where children and teachers in the north are back to school under high security after the region was hit by several deadly attacks in the past months. In South Africa, some 30,000 people attend a ceremony for the beatification of a school teacher who was bludgeoned to death for resisting witchcraft. Finally, in Libya, off-road four-wheel drivers display their sand driving skills in the coastal town of Karbouli. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Welcome back to Africa 54. Here's what's trending. In addition to being the People's Pope, Francis has also developed another reputation as becoming the first global leader of the Catholic Church to truly embrace social media. His Twitter handle at Pontifex has over 6 million English-speaking followers alone, tweeting daily messages of inspiration in at least 7 different languages and averaging 5,000 to 10,000 retweets from followers across the globe. The Archdiocese of Washington sees Francis' upcoming visit to the United States as an opportunity to attract a wave of new followers, both inside and outside the Catholic Church. Well, next up, bigger is better in Los Angeles, booming high-end home market, rather. When a regular mansion just won't do, increasingly the wealthy are turning to what those in real estate are calling ultra-luxury mansions. There is an explosion of 20,000 square foot and more home construction going on in Beverly Hills and surrounding luxury areas with few limits to their size and scope. The trend of speculative building aims to appeal to the overseas buyer who demands more than before. Brand new constructions include over-the-top amenities, mandatory infinity pools, massive home theaters or game rooms, all set across large floor plans on prime real estate. Well, and finally, Madonna kicked off her Rebel Heart tour in Canada.
One step away from being lost in the dark. Just shine your light like a beautiful star. Show the world who you are, who you are.
Yes, the Montreal show began the North African leg of the tour. In true Madonna form, the show featured various costume changes as the veteran bounced back and forth from her classic hits to songs of her current album. She showed off her guitar skills as she sang a remix of her 80s hit, Burning Up. The 57-year-old pop star will begin the European and British segment of the tour in November. Well, it's time now for a Monday Sports Report, and for the latest, we turn to Sonny Young with the sunny side of sports. Hello, Sonny.
Hello, Vincent, and sporty greetings once again to our Africa 54 viewers. Let's begin with boxing. Undefeated American star Floyd Mayweather announced his retirement over the weekend after a unanimous decision victory over Andre Berto in Las Vegas, Nevada. With his 49th consecutive win, Mayweather equaled the perfect record of the late heavyweight Rocky Marciano. The 38-year-old Mayweather is widely regarded as the best boxer of his generation and one of the greatest fighters of all time. He's retiring as one of the richest athletes in the world, with career earnings estimated at $700 million. The sunny side of sports remembers Hall of Fame basketball player Moses Malone, who died Sunday at age 60. Nicknamed chairman of the boards, Malone was a relentless rebounder, a 3-time NBA Most Valuable Player, and a 12-time NBA All-Star. He went straight from Petersburg High School in Virginia to a 21-year professional basketball career. In 1983, teaming up with fellow Hall of Famer Julius Dr. J. Irving, Malone and the Philadelphia 76ers won the NBA championship. Moses also played for 7 other NBA clubs, as well as the Utah Stars and Spirits of St. Louis in the now-defunct American Basketball Association. In 1996, 1 year after he retired, Moses was named one of the 50 greatest players in NBA history. Hall of Fame basketball player Moses Malone, dead at the age of 60. I'm VOA's Sonny Young, and that's the not-so-sunny side of sports. Vincent?
Indeed, not so sunny, but thanks anyway, and be sure to watch the sunny side of sports every Monday and Friday on Africa 54. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. For more news, tune in to VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight, at 1800 UTC, and in the mornings to Daybreak Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks a lot for watching from all of us in Washington. Have a good night.
Welcome to the Voice of America's News Words. This word does not mean something good.
Several municipalities declared bankruptcy before Detroit did, but their debts were smaller. Stockton, California owed $26 million, while Detroit owes $18.5 billion.
Bankruptcy means you don't have enough money to pay your debts. It is a formal and legal action. People, companies, and even cities can declare bankruptcy.
It often means that their property will be sold to pay their debts, and they will have a bad credit rating for years. Now, when you hear the word bankruptcy,
your English will be good enough to know what this news word means.
For more news words, visit our website at learningenglish.voanews.com.